Hello there, welcome back to the Lightcast. I know it's been a minute, but with some of the things that have been going on and some of the news that's been shared lately about theoretical Ocarina of Time remakes, I want to just chime in, because I have a lot of thoughts about this. For the last few years, on and off, there have been rumblings in some places about a potential Ocarina of Time remake. And nobody really knew what this was. Some people thought that this might be the 3DS game being ported to run on the Switch. I would still say that could, anything is possible, but, And generally I tried not to lean into rumors. Seeing a person such as Made the Hate actually mention this really gives some credence to it. I've had some other sources of my own who have shared some similar things with me, but I'll leave it at that. Obviously, I'm not a credible leaker. I don't have a good track record like to Make the Hate. It's not my game. I usually don't pay attention to rumors. The reason why I find this so fascinating is because of a key reason. I've actually been expecting this for a while. And I don't mean in the kind of way of I think it has aged poorly and so they should remake it. And it's very much in vogue to remake classic games, and there's been a lot of success with faithful remakes, especially immediately the Resident Evil franchise comes to mind for me. And we've seen some success there too with other franchises, right? I've been expecting this because, in my opinion, there is a lot of my own research and reasons why I've had a really hard time sharing a lot of the founding research around Raru's Kingdom come because there are some things that do not quite make any sense. They make sense in the context of the story and in the sense that Age of Imprisonment, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom are pretty consistent with one another. But where they don't make any sense is that there are some things mentioned in the lore that refer to events in the Ocarina of Time game that we haven't seen. And I'm not going to really go into that today because, frankly, it's been kind of an interesting couple of months, and I am keeping my mental health together with scotch tape and bubblegum at this point. But there's some things I've seen in my own research that it makes it really hard to present, because the thing is, I don't want to present a theory when I know something in it fundamentally doesn't make sense, and I don't want to try to shove, I don't like theories that are Play-Doh filling in the cracks in order to make something become smoothed over, if that makes any sense. And with receipts, I started to predict and comment on the possibility of an Ocarina of Time remake going about as far back as about 2 years ago now, I would say. And there's some things that overlap for me. One of them is that we have things that are in the Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild lore that refer to events in Ocarina of Time that didn't actually happen on screen at all. Hey, say what you want about Nintendo's writing, or Zelda team's writing. This is an area that they don't really miss, and I believe it is on purpose that they've done this. So then, what is something else in the series that has been referred to as an unseen event? The Imprisoning War was one, and now we have clarification about that, though I have a lot of questions still to this day, such as if it's... A lot of my research heavily favors that Raru's Kingdom is the original founding of the kingdom. And this is not vibes for me. The evidence list at this point, I said that I had hundreds of data points, and somebody said there aren't hundreds of data points to be in a comment somewhere, and just as a quick update to that, the research around the true founding support that I found with working together with others is clocking in and around 440 pages at this point. And I believe in it. It's not grabbing at straws explanations. It's all evidence and sourced directly from the canon. And I'm trying to figure out what is the right vehicle to get this information out. If you follow RevADB has been sharing this in a series, and it has used some of that research at times and other research in his own amazing work as well, to talk about Raru's Kingdom and founding. And there are new things that we learn all the time by digging around in the lore. And so all the signs of my research point to it being the original founding. I realize some people have a lot of problems with that, but just work with me for a minute. It's really odd, in that case, let's say that true founding is true. It's very odd that it still has not moved the Imprisoned War event on the official timeline. It is very odd that the game that would precede the Imprisoning War in the official timeline is getting a remake, allegedly. As I said, I've been expecting this. The other major unseen event also happens to circle around the things that led up to the Imprisoning War, and which is the hero's defeat. It's something that is primarily mentioned in the Goddess Collection books, and it is a source of much anger and frustration to a lot of the fan base. And honestly, rightfully so. It's kind of horrible to have an ending that we couldn't see, couldn't play, and couldn't experience, and we're told that it is part of the game. And I have mentioned this on past Lightcasts before, that thinking on the possibility of the hero's defeat being an in-universe explanation for something that happened in the past, and I found some interesting signs of that, but largely it's been kind of challenging to suggest. The signs of it come in the form of like Sahasrara in A Link to the Past mentioning that they were expecting a hero of a show, but no hero had been showing, talking about the line of knights being wiped out, quote unquote, and similar data. If you see where I'm circling with this, unseen events that I feel I've been able to identify and source in the lore, the Imprisoning War, something we've never seen, we only hear about it as a myth. And then all of a sudden, the Ocarina of Time remake, and I think you've got a kind of a reason for why Heir of the Wilds hasn't been placed on the official timeline yet. I think you have the reason for why it feels very, very confusing what's going on in the story, even when the details are present. And then, of course, this unseen ending that nobody has any idea about and can't even conceive of, because it's like, hey, okay, the hero's defeated, what does that actually mean? Does that mean he was killed? Yes, no, okay. If he wasn't killed, was he just incapacitated? Was the masters were broken? Did they have to reforge it later? There's a lot of things just in, I'm not suggesting any of these things as theories, I'm just like literally asking questions straight off the top. There are things that come up when you start to try to consider the possibility of that existing. And contrary to popular belief, the hero's defeat ending wasn't actually accepted for the Goddess Collection books that came out in 2011. If you go and read about the Retro Studios canceled project from around 2008, there's a really interesting detail on that page, and it's talking about how they were going to make a game set in the bad ending of Ocarina of Time. So obviously, this defeat and this bad ending of Ocarina of Time was circulated somewhere internally years before it showed up in the Goddess Collection, so it wasn't just invented. It feels to me like it is an unrealized idea, and it could be due to hardware limitations of the time. If you've never really dug into like the N64, Ocarina of Time's development history and what their ambitions were and how much they had to scale back due to the failure of the 64 disk drive and limitations of the console at the time, you should really do that, because it would support this idea that maybe this remake could be expanding the scope of the original game to be faithful, but to add new things to it. And this actually makes sense. I've seen a lot of discourse online where people are saying that if it happens, is going to be more open world, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom type stuff, and I don't think that's the case. I think that there are some good reasons to make the exploration of the world more freeform than it was at the time, which was totally just limited due to console limitations. You gotta remember, in the early eras of like 3D gaming especially, a lot of out-of-bounds discoveries and speedrunning tricks were literally born out of people wanting to explore digital worlds more than what they got. In Ocarina of Time alone, there are so many glitches where you can literally walk up the crease of two models meeting and and see behind areas and go look behind the castle and realize there's nothing there, etc. And I think that that's something people still want. It's something that a lot of people who were playing that game at that time weren't that ability to explore. As long as they're careful and bring the dungeons back to life in a way that honors the original and kind of has the old puzzle strategy of the older games, and it's something that was still present in Echoes of Wisdom, despite having that kind of freedom of exploration. I think that this could lead us to a really good place where this remake could be incredibly faithful to the original, but it actually expands it in a way that reignites its title as being one of the most beloved and greatest Zelda titles to ever exist. I think it could be a good thing. And I am not a fan of remaking games typically because I don't have faith in a lot of teams to do this. I feel cautiously optimistic with this one. I think that this is their chance to close those loops of things that happen on screen and to explain what really happened. What is the legend of the hero's defeat? Was he actually defeated or not? Is it some other scenario that happened that we have no idea about? I would love to see it. It sounds like a great idea. I would love to have continuity between all the branches of the timeline. Because if it's going to be official, I would like for it to at least make some sense, if that makes any sense. And I'm going to leave you with a bit of a prediction about this should it come to pass. And this is based on some observations in Age of Imprisonment. So, just to set the stage for this prediction, if you play Age of Imprisonment, or if you watch some Let's Plays, if you didn't play it, the only ruins that are really on the surface are from the era of the goddess Hylia. That alone is very suspect if you're trying to pitch a refounding idea. However, there's some other signs that are there too that actually support this being before Ocarina of Time by some point. Or the time span doesn't matter, even with my own theories aside. Nobody really knows. But there are some signs that would support it. For example, if you go and play the mission Raging Sands, the place where you cross over into the Gerudo Desert from Hyrule Field after you clean up all the camps and you go and face RD, it's actually crossing really around the middle of Hyrule Field. If you play Ocarina of Time, you know why that's important, because that was the entry to the desert in that game. And it's not only that, though the map shows that the Rutella and the Rudo in the Zorai rivers are open, the Rutella River is not actually completely open in Age of Imprisonment. It's just a shallow... I really struggle with the right geography term at the moment, but it's very, really shallow stream, and it's kind of not unlike a wetlands or just maybe a dammed up river, something like that. And there's rock formations at the outlet of the Rutella River going into the Winnear wetlands, and that's where you fight Grimgera. And if you actually look, you can see that the whole river is shallow, and there's just this forest covering what would be the Rabia Plain and Traverse Downfall. You can kind of see it a little bit. And it's interesting, and that's another sign too, because if you go back and look at the id64 version of Ocarina of Time and that map, for as much as the geography of Ocarina of Time is kind of a casserole's nonsense compared to a bunch of other games, you have the Izora River jumping out and going towards the castle, just like is in pretty much every game. And then you have this back loop off the Zora River, slightly south, and it loops back on itself, not entirely unlike what you see with the mouth of the Rutella River. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting to think about the possibility of this and the idea that Age of Imprisonment's world, regardless of the map that you see in the game, because it's got some problems, I plan to cover that soon, the in-game maps that you play on are very consistent with the world of Ocarina of Time. So now we've set the stage, I want to make the prediction. My prediction is that should an Ocarina of Time remake really happen, should that come to pass, we are going to get an expanded scope that covers the defeat as a hero in order to connect to the Downfall timeline, and that that connection will be created, the conditions for the hero's defeat will be created through retrocausality caused by Zelda going back in time and draconifying. Or option 2, which is what I think it could actually be. I am working on a video for this at the moment, and trying to do my best to put one together. It's kind of challenging though. I have a timeline called the Divine Beast timeline, where I've gathered up a lot of evidence that may point to the Downfall timeline not having a shared origin with the other two branches, where we can trace back in the adult timeline and the child timeline to Ocarina of Time, and before that, this would basically be that Downfall timeline has its own origin, and it would be due to an earlier split of time at some point before Ocarina of Time. And I don't make that prediction or that theory lightly. This comes out of some very observable things, such as in Twilight Princess, for example. The statement is made that the Master Sword was forged by the ancient sages. Whereas in A Link to the Past in the Downfall timeline, and in the Era of the Wilds, they have something in common about the Master Sword origin. A Link to the Past's manual actually states that the Master Sword was created by the Hyrulean people as the result of a divine revelation. If that sounds familiar to you, it sounds familiar to me too. And then in the later on, Arrow of the Wilds, whenever you're doing the Master Sword trial quests, one of the comments that's made by the Great Deku Tree is that the Master Sword was a blade created by an ancient goddess. And that is true of the source text, whereas they're usually very clear about the goddess referring to Hylia, if this an ancient goddess. That is really interesting. And to me, the divinity aspect of the creation of the Master Sword is something that the Downfall timeline and Arrow of the Wilds share. And it could point to a potential split origin away from the other games. So in this model, the Ocarina of Time remake is actually just a parallel version of the events of Ocarina of Time that we know of that precede the adult and child timelines, but just for the Downfall timeline only. And there could be benefits to doing a parallel version of Ocarina of Time. For example, remaking something like Ocarina of Time comes with a heavy amount of risk of how fans are going to receive it. If they were to do a parallel version of this, that would effectively reside as a split origin from the other two timeline branches, then it could allow them to basically rewrite the story and have something that is similar to what they had originally, but completely different. It is inherently lower risk in a certain regard, provided they actually take the time to explain it, that that's what's going on. And it would give them a little bit more license to kind of get rid of the things that were a little bit weird about the story before and don't make a whole lot of sense, and embrace something that's a little bit more holistic against the narrative that they've been building since 2017 with the release of Breath of the Wild. And that the Downfall timeline, Age of Imprisonment, all of that exists in its own continuum as a result of a split earlier in time. As for when, who knows? My best guess at this point is a split during founding caused by the actions of Zelda going back in time, but a lot of stuff to be done about that, and I'm trying to work on getting those details out. But again, like I said, I'm kind of doing things as mental health and time permits. So that's my prediction. I just wanted to get some ideas and some thoughts out, say hello because it's been a while, tell you I miss you all, and I will have more videos soon. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Catch you all next time.